All right, so I got a different sampler here with yet another different sample. Pretty simple. I just took a little sample from Bitwig's library, little plucky sound. I'm just looping a little part of it here. No fancy tricks just yet. What I want to do is I want to focus now on the voice modes over here, and then eventually look at the voice stacking options that we have. Now I'm just making this full screen just so we can see the sample a little bit better. I happen to have a clip right now, very simple clip. I'll just go ahead and play it. And I've adjusted the volume envelope here so that the sustain amount is all the way down. Let me just turn this up so you can hear it. Okay, so that's what it would sound like normally. If I increase the release time, we hear the notes overlap each other because right now the voice mode is not set to monophonic. So if I go over to the inspector panel, monophonic is here. I've used this a couple other times, and generally monophonic is a good option if you want to make a bass type patch or a lead sound, because this will ensure that only one note can be played at a time. So if I turn this on right now, we're going to notice even with my long release time, the notes will not overlap because only one will be allowed to play at a time. So with this off, now we can hear overlapping notes. We can see multiple white lines. There we go. Now below that we have single trigger, and this relates to envelopes. In the sampler instrument, we have our AHDSR envelope, and then we can also use this to modulate other things. I currently have this set up to modulate the filter frequency, and I'm going to do some things to adjust the shape of this envelope. And with single trigger, when this is enabled, it's going to make it so that the envelope will not be re-triggered when notes overlap. Now keep in mind, this single trigger works in the monophonic mode, so we're going to notice how this works. First off though, let me play the sound again. So if you look at the filter frequency right now, this is being modulated by the volume envelope here, the amplitude envelope. And I'm going to reduce the sustain level. And now you can see the filter frequency is dropping. After the attack stage here, if I reduce the decay amount, it'll drop even more quickly. But I don't necessarily want to do that, all right? What I want to do is just demonstrate that when we have overlapping notes, we can make it so that the envelope is not going to restart. Let me get out of the expanded mode here, and let me just show you the clip I have here right now. So in this clip that's playing, only these last two notes overlap. The other ones do not. So when I enable single trigger, you're going to notice the volume envelope and also the filter envelope will not restart when these two notes play because they're overlapping. So let's go ahead and go back to the instrument. So keep in mind, those last two notes, you can see the envelope is restarting by looking at this blue line. Let me turn on single trigger. And now that overlapping note doesn't re-trigger the volume and then also the filter envelope, since this is modulating the filter. Now I can increase the hold parameter to make the attack time a little bit longer. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Now, another parameter that we have here is legato glide. With legato glide, if we enable this, the notes will only glide if they overlap. Now, before I do anything with that, down here on the left side of sampler, we have a glide knob. And if I turn this on, the notes will glide to the next pitch, whether they overlap or not. So you can hear how the pitch is bending. Now, if I turn this on, the only notes that are going to bend in pitch are the two that overlap, which are the last two of the bar. So we go in here, and we see the only glide that happens is when this note plays, because this note is overlapping the previous one. Now this last option here, it says steal same key. When enabled, it prevents playing multiple voices from the same key using the special steal release time to the right. Now to be quite honest with you, I haven't really found a very good way to demonstrate this. More than likely, this would be something that will come in handy if we're using voice stacking. But quite honestly, I just haven't found the right way to actually really convey how you can take advantage of this. So I'm going to leave this for now. Below that, we have some other options that are going to be very useful once we start doing some voice stacking, which is the next thing that we're going to look at. So again, once I have this in the monophonic voice mode, the voice count doesn't really matter all that much because I can only play one note at a time. Now, if this wasn't monophonic, let me just go ahead and disable that. Then the maximum amount of voices will dictate how many notes I can play at the same time. Now, I'm not using any voice stacking, which means that every time I play a single note, it generates one voice. Voices per note, 1. If I'm generating one voice per note, I can play up to 24 notes at once, because again, each one generates one voice. But what happens if we make it so that a note generates more than one voice? Well, let's check that out next.